Hey everybody out there in the YouTube universe, this is Mr. Movie, and in today's video I'm going to tell you why Apocalypto is in my collection. Apocalypto came out in 2006. It had a budget of $40 million, but it made $120 million at the box office, which doesn't surprise me seeing how good the movie is, but it does surprise me because of the subject matter. I don't think is something that a lot of people would be interested in. Also, it's all actors that you've never heard of, you've never seen. There's a reason for that, which I'll get to, but I think it's probably just word of mouth. And I remember I went to see it because of word of mouth, and I was blown away. This movie's fantastic. I mean, there's the main thing that's so attractive to me about this movie is the setting. It's about the ancient Mayans, and it just whoever did the sets for this movie, I hope they won an Oscar. I didn't see it when I was looking some stuff up about it, but they should have. It's amazing, and part of that is because of the person who directed it. Now, it's directed by Mel Gibson, who was one of the few actors who turned director who's actually good. There's a few of them, but he's good at it. He doesn't do many, but when he does do it, they're usually good movies. And what's surprising about this is we all know Mel Gibson. He's said some things and he's done some things that seem that he's not, really sensitive to other people's cultures and religions and things like that. But when I was researching some of the stuff about this movie, that I had already kind of known a lot of it, but there was some other stuff that I found out that it was him. He was really, really strict about getting everything right. Now, that includes their culture, their religion, the look of everything. Now, maybe you might think that's because he wanted to make an accurate movie. Maybe that's it, but it's surprising to me that somebody that has that kind of history would be that interested in getting it right about people that aren't like him. But hey, I can't argue with the product because the movie that came out is amazing, and it's most likely because of how passionate he was about getting it right and having it be accurate. So, like I said, it's the scene and the setting, and down to they got the ancient Mayan language that they used at the Yucatan at the time. Their look, I probably got a lot of that from their artwork. I mean, it's spot on. They nailed it, and it's an amazing movie. The guy who's in it, the main star, is a guy named Rudy Youngblood. You won't recognize him, and you won't recognize any of the other actors either, which is another reason why I was surprised that it did so well. But maybe people went to see it because of the Mel Gibson thing. I don't know, but what they did, which is cool, and it doesn't matter that you don't know any of these people, is because they're ethnically correct. Now, what I mean by that is all the actors are either Native American, Mesoamerican. They all have some kind of connection to the Mayan people, and they even speak the language. I think probably some of them had to even learn it, which shows a dedication. But everything is accurate historically. The look of it, the sets, and it's just visually beautiful, and everything is really well done, and it sucks you in and makes you feel like you're really there at the time when all this happens. Now, this movie has subtitles. Anybody that knows me knows I'm not a big fan. Now, the reason why I'm not a big fan is because I always find it distracting when you have to read what's down here and watch what's up here. I always find a disconnect there. Now, I like foreign films. It's not that I have no problem watching foreign films. It's just that a lot of the time I find it distracting. I could watch a kung fu movie like that because if it's 90% action, 10% story, you don't miss much. But and with this, you don't miss much, because not a lot has to be said. And that's another unique reason why this movie is really great, is because you don't have to follow along with what's being said, because much isn't being said. The action tells the story, the sets tell the story, and that's a really unique thing. And it just takes you right through, and from beginning to end, this movie is amazing. As I said, it takes place in the Yucatan in the 1500s, and that's the Mayan people. You're introduced to the main character, whose name is Jaguar's Paw. He's the main character. The Rudy Youngblood actor plays him, and he does a great job, because it's his face that tells a lot of the story, and his physical movements, and all that is just, it just nails the character, and makes you really follow him. And you even, like, he doesn't say much, but he doesn't have to. You understand who he is, what he's about, and what he's trying to accomplish. Now, the movie starts off, they're in the jungle doing a hunt. It's him, his father, and a few of his friends. They get an animal, they're chopping it up, and there's a part where, I don't know how to say this without just saying it. They chop up the animal, and they're divvying up the pieces. And there's one of his friends is this big, strong, husky kid who they're always kind of messing with him. You could tell he's a little younger than them, but he's big. And they're passing out the different cuts of the meat, and they tell him it's a tradition that they have to eat the balls to become a man, a great, hunter. And he's sitting there, and he eats them, and then they all start cracking up, because none of that was true. They just did it to mess with him, which is pretty funny. Now, that'll come into play a little later with another joke that they do, but I'll get to that in a second. Now, as they're wrapping up everything and they're going back to their village, they come across these strangers who are Mayans also, but they kind of face off, and they don't really know these people, so it's kind of tenuous for a second. And then they offer some meat, because they have some fish, and they do a little trade. Thank you. But there's something about them. They look shell-shocked. They look terrified. And Jaguar's Paw asks them what's wrong, and they don't answer. They just leave. And the father kind of pulls him to the side and says, let's go. So right before they leave, the big guy, the big kid, he says to the father, like, I'm having problems. He said, what's your problem? He said, the problem I'm having is that I'm trying to have children with my wife, because her mother's driving me crazy, but it doesn't seem to be happening. So he gives him these like red leaves, and he says, listen, rub this down there next time you try, and I guarantee you'll have kids. And he's like, yeah, all 10 of my kids were born because I did this. And he's like, oh, thank you. He's very excited. So they go back, they're walking to the village, and right before they get in there, Jaguar's Paw father pulls him to the side and says, hey, listen, remember those people we saw in the jungle? Remember that look in their eyes? He said, that's fear. He was like, never have that look in your eyes. Never have fear in your heart. He's like, you're a great warrior, my son. He was like, you're a part of our community. And he's like, you should never, ever feel fear in your heart. And he doesn't really understand what he's trying to say, but it comes into play and he does realize what his father was trying to get across to him later. When they get in there, you get to meet Jaguar Paw's wife and his son. And you could tell, they're a very happy family and all that. And the whole village is like that. Everybody's happy and, laughing. They're glad to see the hunting party come back. And they're, very isolated, little happy community. Then you see the mother start messing with the big guy. When are you going to give me grandchildren? When are you going to give me grandchildren? And he's like, all right, enough, you old witch. And he takes his wife, and they go do what they got to do. And then a couple of minutes later, you hear screaming. And he comes running out, and he's holding his package, and he's like, it burns. And he sits in like a well, and he's like this, trying to cool it off. And his wife comes running out like this, oh, it's burning, grabbing her mouth, so you can infer what was happening there. And, he's in there, he's like, oh. Finally, you see everybody's laughing, especially Jaguar Paw father. He's dying. And so he played a trick on him that these leaves do that to your privates, and he's just looking at everybody laughing at him. He's like, and then he starts laughing because, all right, you got me, you got me. So like I said, it's everybody's happy and they have a nice life, but then the movie takes a very, very dark turn, and the temperature changes. They all fall asleep, and they're woken up by a raiding party of other Mayans who they don't know, who are very warlike. They're warriors. You could see that they got the war paint on, and they got like bones as armor almost, and they have weapons of war, and they just come in and they're burning everything and killing people and tying up everybody. And Jaguar's Paw sees this happening. He grabs his wife and kid, takes them out kind of the back of the village, and in the ground there's a big pit, like a well. I would say it's like a well almost, and but it's pretty deep, and there's a rope that goes into it, and he lowers them down. He says, stay here, stay safe, be quiet. I gotta go and try to help the other people. So he runs in and he sees that they got his father, they got everybody captured and everything, and then they get him, they hit him in the head, and you're introduced to one of the guys who is in the raiding party, who turns out to be he's such an asshole, this guy. You gotta hate this guy. And then you're also introduced to the main guy of them. He's a big, really stocky, muscular guy, and you could tell he's their leader. He's got all kinds of bones and stuff like that. Like, so you say he looks like a general basically, and they capture Jaguar Paw father, and they have Jaguar's Paw kneeling, and he's looking at his father, and his father tells him, "Don't be afraid." And the guy who's an asshole, he's just laughing at the situation, and they cut his father's throat. And Jaguar's Paw goes crazy, but they knock him unconscious. So then they take the able-bodied men, they tie him up, they got their hands tied behind their back, and they all tie him up by the neck on these poles. Same thing with the women. And they leave the old people, they leave the children, they don't need them. And they take them marching out of the village. Now they have a long journey to get where they're going. They have to go through a river, a mountain, the whole thing. When they get on top of the mountain part, you see the guy who's tied up at the end. He was hurt when they were fighting. So he's bleeding, and you could tell he's not going to make it. And then he just, boom. And when he does that, he falls off the cliff. But they're all attached, so they're holding on, trying not to all fall off the cliff at the same time. And they're struggling. So the guy I told you who's an asshole, he comes up and he cuts the guy loose. And then they're able to come up, and he looks at Jaguar's Paw and he's like, "Oh, would you lose your friend?" Like he's always messing with him. So then the general guy comes over and he's like, "What did you do? You let one of them go?" And he was like, "He was dead weight." He was like, "I make the decisions, not you." He tells him basically, "I'm the man, you do what I say." So as they're going, they're almost to where they need to go to, and they come across this little girl. And you could tell she's got something wrong with her skin, and everybody in her little village is dead. And you could tell it's from disease. So they try to stay away from her, but she looks crazy. She looks like an evil little girl. You know how like kids are creepy in movies when they say weird stuff? This is her. And she tells them, she tries to go up to them, they push her away. She tries again, they push her away. And she says to them, basically, a prophecy almost. She was like, you guys aren't going to last. Your time is almost over. She was like, when the jaguar shows up, and the sun will turn red with blood, and it will be your undoing and your end. So she's basically prophesizing their deaths, but also their end, which comes into play later. So when they get to the village, well, it's not a village. When they get to the outskirts of the main city, you see all these people doing different things. There's industry going on. So you say, okay, this is the main place. And this is also what you see when you look at the history of the Mayans. Anything you see depicted in their art, or anything, you see those big pyramid-like temples. And I mean, it's stunning the way they did this, the set design. It's really stunning. Like, you look at it and you feel like you're there. If you feel like you're in one of their paintings. So now when the idea is they're going to take the women, they sell them into slavery, and the men they're going to sacrifice, because that's what they did, human sacrifice to their gods. And one of their manifestations of their god is the sun. So they bring these guys, Jaguar's Paw, his friends, they bring them up these big steps, and they get them to right where the sacrifice is happening. And you show one guy getting sacrificed, and what they do is the king and his wife are sitting there, and you got to see they're all decked out with the feathers and the whole thing. It's really, really stunning looking, but it also seems like everybody's under like a drug-like trance, like a religious fervor. And the reason why is that they're sacrificing humans. So they show one guy who's like the high priest. They put the people who are going to be sacrificed like on an altar, and they hold their arms and legs, and he stabs them in the chest and rips out their heart and shows it to the crowd, and the crowd goes crazy. Now they feel like they have to do this, the blood sacrifice of these people, to appease their gods, to help their crops and all of that kind of thing. So it's just part of their religion. They don't think of it as murder. And when they kill one of the people, he takes the heart, whatever, and they cut the people's heads off. They throw the head down the steps, and the body, there's people at the bottom catching their heads in like nets. It's kind of gruesome, but this is how it was done. And they kill one guy, they kill another guy, and then it's Jaguar's Paw's time. He's the next one up, and he just walks, okay, and they get ready to do it, and he's about to kill him. Right when that happens, there's an eclipse. When the moon goes in front of the sun, everything starts turning dark. Now, these people didn't have science, so they didn't know what that was. They couldn't comprehend it. They just thought, okay, the sun is turned almost red. Our God must be had his fill of blood. That's how they interpreted it. That's what the high priest tells the king. And they say, okay, then that's enough for today. But they don't, you can see they kind of don't really like believe the high priest, and he starts speaking to the sun. And then you know how an eclipse goes, it doesn't last long. It starts moving out, and then the sun comes back out. All the people start cheering, and they believe what this guy is saying, that it's because they did these sacrifices, and now the God is full. They don't need to do them anymore. So he said, what do we do with these guys, Jaguar, Paw, and his friends? They said, get rid of them. So that the general guy takes them down, and they go into this little place, and there's like a courtyard. And they cut them loose, and that guy, the asshole guy, he's like, all right, we're going to see which one of your friends goes first. And the idea is the general guy tells his son, he says, you go out into the field. We need somebody to finish them off. So he gives them a club to finish them off. And the idea of this game sort of is they release two guys to run. And they said, your jungle is there. Run to freedom. And they start running, but these guys start throwing, spears at them, shooting arrows at them, hurling rocks at them to try to hit them. That's the game. And if they get stabbed or, an arrow in them and they're still kind of alive, the kid at the end, who's the son of the general guy, he just clubs him to death to finish him off. Everyone they release gets shot, whatever. I mean, it's pretty. One guy gets an arrow right through his face, comes through his mouth. Everybody's getting killed. The big guy, he runs. He gets hit with the arrow. He goes down. It's in his side. And it's Jaguar Paw's time. They let them go. They start running. He starts zigzagging because he's kind of figuring, okay, maybe I can get away with this. Zigzag, zigzag, zigzag. And everything is missing, whatever. Then he gets hit with something. And he goes down. And the guy's about to club him. But as he's about to club him, the big kid's still alive. He grabs the guy's ankle. And while he's distracted, Jaguar Paw pulls the arrow out of his side and stabs him. And the kid falls. And then Jaguar Paw get up and he runs towards the jungle, which is the direction in which his village is. The father, the general guy, sees this and goes nuts because it's his son that just got killed. So him and all the other guys that's with him start running, and he sees his son is dead. They said, get him. They start chasing Jaguar's Paw. I would say the rest of the movie is one of the coolest chase scenes ever because it's through the jungle and all kinds of stuff happens. There's one part where he's kind of, now mind you, they're chasing him into his jungle. He knows the terrain. They don't really know the terrain well. So he has the advantage, even though he's by himself and he's hurt. There's a part where he climbs a tree and he's got to hold in his blood so it doesn't drip on them. There's a part where one of the guys kind of is held back a little, and Jaguar Paw grabs one of those poison frogs, puts like the tip of like these thorns that he pulled off a bush, puts them on the frog to make him poison, makes a little blowgun out of the like a leaf, gets the guy a couple of times. You see he starts like heaving up and he goes down. Then when he goes down, the asshole guy comes back to find, he hears something. He sees the guy down. He sees Jaguar Paw, and they rush each other. And the club that the guy had dropped, he slides underneath while the guy is trying to club Jaguar Paw, and he picks it up and bashes that guy. And then he's like kind of like this, and gives him one good bash, and you love it because you hate that character, and he deserved to die. So they're still chasing him. He comes out. He takes a beehive and he wraps it up in paper, and then he hurls it at him and it explodes. There's bees everywhere and they're like getting stung. A couple of those guys die. They chase him and he comes to a waterfall. He's got nowhere else to go, and he just jumps off. And they're like, oh, he's dead? And he's like, the general guy is still so insane with anger. He's like, we're all jumping. We're going after him. He's not dead. And they were like, what? He's like, jump. And one guy doesn't want to jump. Boom, he kills him. Well, the guys are like, okay, we'll jump. They all jump off, right? But before they jump off, what makes them really, like the guy really insane enough to jump off this thing after him, is Jaguar's Paw lands in the water. He gets up and he looks at them and he sees them. They see he's still alive, but they're like, we don't want to go after him. But he yells at them, my name is Jaguar's Paw. He's like, this is my jungle. He was like, I hunted here, my father hunted here, and my son is gonna hunt here. So basically tell him, this is my place you've come into now. We were in your place, but now you're in my place. And it's really cool. It's really like inspiring. You're like, yeah, kick their ass, screw them. So they all jump off. One of them hits the head on a rock. He doesn't survive. So now there's only 3 of them, the general and 2 other guys. Now they're really getting close to the village. And Jaguar's Paw, he's like, I gotta get there. As he starts getting it, now it's been raining for like the last, say, 10 minutes. And you see that the wife and the kid are in this pit well thing, and the water's coming up to a point where, they don't know what to do. They might drown. One omission. She was pregnant. I forgot to say that. But she was pregnant. Just, when you first meet, she's pregnant. And but you don't know how pregnant she is. And when they're in the water's coming up, you see her struggling and you see her in pain. And she gives birth like it's an ancient water birth. It's pretty graphic, but hey, it's life. She gives birth, so she has the baby and she has the kid she already had, and they're gonna drown. And finally he comes up to the well, he sees this, and he's like, just hold on, I'll come back for you. And they're like, we're gonna drown, but there's still 3 guys left. But now they're chasing him around his village, which he knows like the back of his hand. And they had set traps for hunting, because that's what they did. So he knows where all of the traps are. So he's chasing the one. He goes to the general and he sees him and he's like, why don't you come after me? I'm ready to fight you. And as he comes after him, he trips a wire thing, and this thing comes out. It's like a wooden plank almost with spikes on the end that just comes out. Whoa, hits the general guy. Boom, boom. His chest, heart, lungs, ribs. Like 6 of them in his chest. And he's like, and he's dead. He sees the other 2 guys coming. He takes off. Those 2 guys look at the dead general. Now they're like, wait a minute. We really don't know what to do. Excuse the fire engine. But they don't know what to do at this point, because they see their leader's dead. They kind of, should we still chase this guy? He's killed all of our guys. But they said, you know what? We've come this far. We better keep chasing him. So they take off after the guy. He's running. And then he runs all the way to the beach, to the ocean. And there's nowhere else to go. But he stops. And he looks behind him, and the 2 guys behind him stop. And the reason they stop in their tracks is they look out into the ocean, and here come all these boats, and you see the Spaniards coming in full armor, swords. They have a priest with a cross, like a monk almost, with the cross and holding the Bible. And you see, these are conquistadors. So it's very cool historically. I mean, what they did wasn't so cool, but you see them coming, and they're looking at them like, these must be aliens. They don't know what boats are. They don't know what any of this is, and armor, and they're white, and they got facial hair, and they're like, what are these? So they're just stunned. But Jaguar's Paw has no time to look at these aliens coming. His wife and kid is gonna die. So he just runs back. These guys foolishly walk towards the Spaniards, and we all know how that ended. But then you see Jaguar's Paw had saved his wife. It's him and the two kids, and he's bandaged up, and they got the kid wrapped up, and they're looking from in the jungle. They're looking out, and they see, and the wife says, who are they? What do they want? Talking about the Spaniards, and he says, I don't know. He's like, but this is gonna be a new world, and that's pretty much what happens historically. It's a new world for them. They discovered a new world, but it's a new world also for the Mayans, because the Spaniards came and pretty much wiped them out, which is, a tragedy, but that's what happened in history. And the main thing that you take back is, okay, you know what? Jaguar's Paw, he took his father's advice, and he had no fear. No fear whatsoever. He took on all these guys and came out on top. And he remembered where he was from, and he defended it and saved his family. It's an amazing movie. I mean, the action, it's nonstop, and like I said, the way it looks is it just takes you right into that historical period, and you get lost in it. And it's a really amazing movie. I suggest it highly. If you know nothing about the Mayans or their history, watch this movie. And top to bottom, completely flawless movie, if you ask me. Now, I put the rewatchability scale at 80. Not too high, not too low. I could watch it every once in a while. It's kind of gruesome in some parts, but it's something you watch every once in a while. You kind of forget about it. You say, you know what, let me watch that. And if it's on TV, you're always going to just say, I'm in. And no matter where you catch it, if you've already seen it, you could watch it. Great movie. I suggest it highly, and it's one of the few movies with subtitles in my collection that's not a Kung Fu movie. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. And if you guys want to see me review some more movies, tell you why they're in my collection, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for when I make new ones, and share it with all your movie nut friends. And this is Mr. Movie signing off, and I will see you again next time at the Flicks.